Hi everyone, so I'm recording my video for this behavioral finance class and the book review that we were supposed to do. My book was actually called Think Twice, Harnessing the Power of Counterintuition, and it's by Mauboussin. This book is mostly just describing how as humans we all have natural tendencies in our brains and how our minds work, and how these different tendencies could sort of lead to more negative results and more negative decision making than can lead to positive. His book is offering pieces of advice and sort of precautionary measures that we should take in order to counteract our natural tendencies to sort of reason through the decisions that are available to see what might actually be the best alternative and not the most common alternative that we would typically make as humans with these natural tendencies. So the first thing that he offers in the introduction is this three-step process in identifying and taking advantage of opportunities. He says you should prepare for the decision by learning about the mistakes of others and sort of preparing yourself for that. You recognize similar problems in the real world. So for example, learning about these mistakes that others have made in the past, if you're able to recognize that same problem in like a realistic situation that you're in, that might give you a better advantage in how to make a better decision. And applying mental tools, these mental tools that he offers in this book, throughout this entire book, he's saying if you could apply these mental tools on a daily basis, on more of like a common basis in every decision that you're making, it'll allow you to make a more informed decision and not just one that seems to be the best decision based on our first instinct, like our first natural tendency to think of an idea. So his first offer of explanation as to why individuals are sort of prone to making bad decisions and making more mistakes is the fact that we tend to view situations from the inside view and not the outside view. So before I go on, let me explain what these are. The inside view is actually looking at situations, with the information that's presented right around you. So like information that's easily accessible, information that's already available. Making decisions based on this information is not always going to be the most effective decision. It's not always going to be the best decision. But he's offering a different alternative called the outside view. And the outside view is more looking at how individuals that were in the same situation or similar situations in the past, looking at those results and seeing how those results can sort of be emulated, and how the situation in those within that problem in the past could actually be emulated in our present situation in order to make more informed decisions. He's saying that people tend to sort of, I guess, push away this outside view and sort of favor the inside view, because whenever like it. As people think more with the outside view, it forces them to surrender like the confidence that they've already acquired, from the information that's already been presented to them. So when we start to question like the information that's already presented to us, we lose our confidence and we lose comfort in that. We lose comfort, and that's why people are more prone to believing that the information presented to them at that same situation is more helpful to them, and it's also going to make them very unique. So they also think that, so people, like a big problem with people is the fact that when they think with the inside view, they tend to think that their situation is going to be different from everyone else's situation, from everyone else that was in the same situation. Most of the times, like, this is not true. Most of the times, like, it's going to be like probably the same result, but just the fact that people have this tendency to think that, oh, I'm different this time, oh, this time will be different. This tendency to think that, oh, this one situation will be different, that's sort of what's causing people to think more with the inside view than with the outside view. He also goes on to explain that things like mental anchors and tunnel vision, these limit our options in our own minds. Once we start to think of anchors, we sort of give ourselves like a small range of a window to fluctuate within that anchor, and that sort of limits every other possibility that's really out there. So for example, if someone asks you like how big is that person's shoe, you would automatically sort of have like an estimate in your head, and then you would assume, oh, maybe a size 10. And like based on like the actual analysis of the shoe, like how big and small it is, you might go like up or down, like plus or minus 1, maybe 1.5. but the initial estimate of, oh, the size is 10, that's what he refers to as a mental anchor. And having that mental anchor in any decision making, that's sort of what's limiting people from thinking in any other perspective, I guess. And he's saying that this is also leading to tunnel vision. When someone is so focused on one idea or one decision or one possibility, it sort of limits their own mind to, it closes their mind off to like the other alternatives that are out there. Granted, yeah, people might think that having this tunnel vision is because that alternative seems like the best. However, even though it might be the best, the author is also advising that we sort of not neglect. He doesn't want us to neglect the fact that there are better alternatives out there, even though that decision seen in the tunnel vision might seem like the best one. He's saying like there are better alternatives out there, so don't just completely limit yourself and don't completely close your mind off to the things that you might see only in that moment. He's just saying, he goes on to explain that there's other precautions like I remember like the Mauboussin goes on to explain how the expert squeeze, which is like the phenomena that describes people tending to stick to old habits rather than moving on to more effective and new methods. That tendency is sort of causing people to act and decide in a manner where it might not be the best decision, but because they're most comfortable with that decision, they'll make that decision. So for example, like most of the times in most firms, like experts are mostly relied upon for a company's main sources of information. However, if you think about it, like nowadays computers and like the algorithms that experts really develop, those computer generated results and those computer generated probabilities and outcomes, those are what the author is suggesting as more effective and more accurate in predicting future outcomes. He's saying, yeah, experts are still needed, like the experts like which are considered the old method, the experts are still needed to generate algorithms for the computer to go and actually predict future outcomes. However, once those algorithms are already generated and once the rules in reality have already been established, as soon as the experts already establish these rules, he's arguing that computer-generated models are going to be more cheaper and they're going to be more reliable in predicting future outcomes. And he presents a lot of studies where it shows that yeah, like there are studies that have been done to show that most computer-generated future outcomes have been a lot more accurate recently than have experts deciding and experts predicting based on what they've gone through in the past. So he's still sort of I guess another new method that he presents is beyond the computers is the fact that we need information from a collective group of individuals. So instead of focusing on one expert or a few experts, he's saying that the collective wisdom of a group of people is a lot more informed and it's a lot more varied to the point where it'll help the company or the firm even more. So like the most I guess applicable example is when, for example, if you need plumbing work done in your house. This is like one of those scenarios where you might still resort to having a plumber. Like yeah, like having the plumber will be the best option because that person is an expert in that actual field. He's warning us that instead of having, he's sort of warning us to not rely completely on the collective wisdom of individuals because that might not be as good as some experts. However, he's saying that we should not completely rule out the fact that a collective group of individuals would present more wisdom than would a few group of experts. And the best example that he gives is the fact that most plumbing work that needs to be done, one specialized plumber, one specialized expert in plumbing will be a lot better than, let's say, a group of astronauts, physicists, and biologists. This is one of the warnings that he's presenting also because he's saying, yeah, he presents a new method in that a collective group of individuals could provide more wisdom. However, he's also warning us of the fact that experts are not completely, their effect and their wisdom is not completely nullified. It's more about the fact that we need to find a good balance between relying on a few group of experts and like a larger group of collective individuals and their collective wisdom that they all present together. He also goes on to describe how the environment and like the situation that we're in is also affecting how we make our decisions. So one of the biggest, I guess, examples of this is how in groups people tend to conform to the other group members' decisions. For example, if you were in a group of 30 people and you were asked a simple problem and you clearly knew the answer, you clearly knew the obvious answer. However, if 29 other people are answering the wrong answer purposely without you knowing, most people would, I guess, still yell out the right answer. However, there are some people, and I think the study that he presented was about 1/3 of people will actually conform to the conform to the idea of the majority and actually present the wrong answer. So this kind of conforming to the group idea, when decision making is influenced by the conforming of an individual to like the larger group majority, that's influencing their decision possibly in a negative way, even though that individual might think something else is the right answer. So when you think something's right, I guess go for it. Don't just completely conform to like the majority that's telling you, oh no, this isn't the best way, this might not be the best way, because 99.9% of the time that happens, you're mostly just giving into their pressure, and you're going to say like exactly what they want, and that might not be the best in your own opinion. So he's saying that this kind of confirmation to the group and the majority, it can actually affect our decision making. He also goes on to describe how now about how like complex systems and like decisions that are made within a complex system, how that can be sort of analyzed. He's warning us that any decision that we may make within a system, he's warning us that decisions that are made to make a system better should not be focusing on decisions about each component. So like, for example, if you want to make a company better, you shouldn't be making decisions based on each individual in the actual company. He's saying that you should make a decision based on the actual company itself. So like the author argues that once a collective group of individuals become one entire complex system, the property of the actual system is actually very different from the property of each individual. So like he's saying, when you're making a decision, don't just completely base your decision off the individual components of the system, but more on the system as a whole itself. And that when making decisions based on those kind of properties, that will lead to more effective advancement of the actual system than would focusing on decisions making each individual change. He's also describing how we should be cautious about how our decisions in a complex system, how one decision to alter one component of the actual system can actually change the entire thing. The biggest example I remember him giving us was the fact that at Yellowstone National Park in the 1900s, I think, or 1800s, the elk population was endangered. So they purposely bred elk, they purposely enumerated elk so that their population would grow. However, one thing that they did not expect was the fact that with the increasing number of elk, that also created a lot more problems in the actual ecosystem itself. So for example, like the growing number of elk would actually cause more soil erosion because they're grazing a lot more often. They're cutting down trees more often because they're feeding on the trees. And he goes on to describe that these trees that are being taken away from the soil and like being, I guess, consumed by these elk, the lack of these trees is causing the beaver population to actually decrease too. And when the beaver population is decreasing, it affects the actual water, it affects the ecosystem within the water as well. And this sort of just shows and exemplifies how just altering one component of the actual entire system has influenced and changed completely the entire ecosystem of Yellowstone National Park. So like one of the last major points that Mauboussin also advises us on is the fact that when we're making decisions and when we see certain outcomes based on our decisions, he's advising us not to be very arrogant. He's also advising us to know when luck is being played and know when our skills are being or know when our skills are impacting the decision and the outcome. Most of the times, like, our decisions may lead to some positive results and some good results. However, he's also advising us to be able to differentiate when skill is actually causing that positive outcome and when luck is causing that positive outcome. So, for example, if someone, let's say investors invest some money into funds that managers, let's say investors invest money into funds that have been doing particularly well. These people will buy high, invest money into the funds when they're doing well. However, once those funds, once the performance of the funds actually reverts back to the mean and the average, they're gonna end up selling their funds, and they're gonna end up like losing some of their. They're gonna end up pulling out, and this in the end, like, they're pretty much buying high and selling low when it should be the opposite that they should be doing in order to benefit themselves. So he's also explaining how luck and skills are very different components of the actual decision making, and how we should be able to differentiate when luck is when luck is impacting the result and when skill is actually impacting the results. And he's also explaining how important this really is in order to avoid potentially devastating mistakes. Overall, I thought this book was very informing. I haven't read any sort of financial books or any sort of economics books. This was my first one, having been one of my first semesters of business courses. However, I'm very glad that I actually decided to read this book in particular. I actually chose this book based on one of the YouTube videos that I saw about him. It was a channel, Harvard Business School's Press. I saw a video with him doing an interview, and I thought, oh wow, this might be a great read. It teaches us about the psychology of humans and how we can sort of trick our own minds and trick our own natural tendencies to sort of reason through situations in a better way in order to make more informed decisions. So, like, I don't know. I feel like one of the most astonishing things is the fact that every single time I was reading one of these points in his book, I feel like they apply to me, and I feel like every single thing that he pointed out, I was falling victim to the exact same thing that he's telling me not to fall victim to. And, like, me having read all these, like, concepts that have been written out very articulately by this author, I thought it was a great read. And I thought, like, honestly, just reading all these words out and all these concepts out that go on through my head, I think being able to read it out in words and being able to read all these concepts out in the novel has actually helped me note these specific points to myself in my own mind, so that I can be more careful and more precautious in making these decisions in the future. So overall, a great read. I definitely recommend it. If anyone ever wants to read this book for their next book report, I 100% recommend it. This is a great read. Not too hard to read either. So honestly, yeah, it was a great read. Great authors. So that's it for my book report. That's it for my book review. I look forward to anyone even addressing this. Thanks.